Perfect. I didn't want
for this morning.
I'm sorry, I didn't want to goof you up.
No, sorry. I didn't write you out. Brian just walked in and I was like,
Good morning.
Good
morning. Come
I
on
was just
in.
trying a DVD.
Welcome.
that's all right.
So, as you know, today is kind of a big day. So just like the service went a couple minutes longer than it often does. So we'll see a couple more people trickle in. But welcome to our both a new member class. So this is the last of the new member classes, right? In the sequence to the final new member class you'll ever have to be at. And also, well, you don't have, we're glad you're here. And then also for the adult faith formation time today. So this is we can call this a Lutheran look at faith ministry in the church. So that's kind of a fancy title, but basically you'll get a sense of what we're talking about today. So here's what our next hour is going to look like, just to give you an overview. I'm going to welcome, just kind of offer some framing comments for where we're going. Then I'm going to share a little bit of a personal reflection. Then I'm going to talk about this document called From Conflict to Communion, which is this ecumenical document between Lutherans and Catholics, which will help frame our discussion and our time together. Oh shoot, I've made this document in, not in PowerPoint, but in a different program, and the formatting got messed up. So we were talking about faith, vocation, and belonging for a couple minutes, and that will be a chance for us to discuss and kind of reflect on kind of our own faith experiences and just our own life experiences and connect that to our faith. And we're going to talk about stewardship and kind of reframe stewardship and what that's all about over the last few minutes. So it'll start with me kind of talking more. Then for the first three, then number four, that'll be a chance for us all to talk as a group, kind of with people around you. And then five, Sue and I will kind of lead you through that time. That all sound good? Awesome, welcome. So come on in. We're just getting started here. So just to kind of help frame what we are doing here today. So we're going to first, so good morning first. So glad you're here. And if you keep on coming in, glad you're here. Welcome. So welcome, come on in. So whether you're like really new here or you've been here for years and years, I think this will be a good time for us to be together. I think you'll feel like this is worth your time. This will be a space for us to learn, reflect, and share together a little bit. And so historically, this final new member class was the class where we talked about stewardship a lot. So we're going to try something a little bit differently because that ends up feeling kind of like, hey, St. Matthew's come in here a little bit of a sales pitch. So we're not going to do that. We're going to try and have a deeper conversation about who we are, who we are as Lutherans and how our faith tradition relates to others and how our faith shapes our lives. And then kind of stewardship kind of flows out of that. And then also we're going to reflect a little bit, kind of this will be Reformation Sunday kind of related as well. So today is Reformation Sunday. It often feels kind of like the Lutheran 4th of July, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. A little bit. Did you notice that today? The music's great. It is a festive, a lot of people are wearing red. I was going to wear red today. I don't have a lot of red clothes, and my one red shirt was in the wash, and I was like, oh shoot! I was thinking about wearing it, but I think it has some stains on it. Thanks, kids. So I figured it would be better to not bust out my red. I don't think it's a Lutheran 4th of July. Actually, I once attended a church. I worked at a church in seminary that called today Reformation and Reconciliation Sunday, and that's a title that stuck with me. It reminds us that the Reformation wasn't just a beginning, it was also a moment of break in the Western Church. And we'll reflect on what it means to be Lutheran, not inherently in opposition to others, but in relationship to others. We're going to look at this ecumenical document that was jointly created by the Lutheran World Federation, which is kind of like the global Lutheran Church, if you will, the closest thing we have to that, and the Roman Catholic Church, called From Conflict to Communion, which came out in 2017. So it's a few years old now, but it's still like the most recent major document of the sort. And it explores how Lutherans and Catholics have come to understand each other more deeply over the past 50 years. Where we recognize, hey, we've not been on the same page, and where we might be able to get there, and then there's some issues we still need to work through. And that came out in 2017, which was the 500th year of the Lutheran Reformation. I'll always remember that it was 1517 because I went to St. Olaf College, which is a Lutheran school, and the main address for the campus was 1517 St. Olaf Avenue. So that was my mailing address. Yeah, every student, if you wanted to send me mail, you send it to Kevin Farrar, 1517 St. Olaf Way, Northfield, Minnesota. So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about. But to get into that, I want to share a story, a personal anecdote about someone that's helped me shape my Lutheran identity and what it means to be a church that builds bridges rather than barriers. So I'm going to be talking for the next few minutes about somebody named Bill Rush. So these are two pictures of Bill here. He actually is quite a kind guy despite his lack of smiling. So this is on the left. This is Bill Rush with Pope John Paul II in 1990. So the ELCA was formed in the late 80s, and so he was sent on behalf of the ELCA to go send a greeting message to the Pope in 1990. And on the right there, that's Bill Rush with, I think his title is His Holiness. I think I wrote it down. It's a fun title. It's like His Holiness Ecumenical Patriarch of Constantinople, Bartholomew I, or something like that. He is the head of the Global Orthodox Communion. And he was also a teacher of mine. So Bill was a professor of mine in seminary, and he's been a key mentor of mine. He passed away, I think 2-3 years ago now. He's a brilliant theologian and significant ecumenist, kind of a builder of bridges between church groups. But he also is definitely a pastor too. And despite how he may look, with his lack of warmth, he is a warm, gentle soul. I went to seminary at Yale Divinity School, so that's a part of Yale University. As you might imagine, there's a lot of big egos there, students and faculty and administration alike. And in a sea of these big egos and academics who honestly saw their teaching largely as a necessary evil to fund their research and speaking and writing, Bill wanted to shape pastors, specifically Lutheran pastors. He was already in his mid-70s by this point, so this wasn't like something he had to do to fund his other work. This was something he cared about. And he shaped us to be Lutheran in more than just a cultural sense. So I went to St. Olaf College. That was my first real exposure to Lutheranism, and so I learned there a lot of to be Lutheran at St. Olaf meant to know about Lefse and Lutefisk and some other Scandinavian jokes. I got a couple chuckles out of that. So I'm gathering we're in a group of people that weren't raised Norwegian Lutheran. Pastor Ann, you were just at St. Olaf. Did you sense that Norwegian Lutheranness there?
Everywhere is yaya.
Yaya. I think that's just like the fight cry. I don't think that's inherently. If they were really trying to be Norwegian, Minnesota Lutheran, they would say "ufta" everywhere. But anyways, so I wasn't raised Lutheran. I didn't grow up with that Scandinavian or German heritage that often gets bundled with it. But Bill helped me see that being Lutheran isn't about your last name or about certain kind of Lutheran potluck. There's a theological depth to it, and it's about grace, about being rooted in the cross, and about how we relate to others. Bill was really influential on me, but admittedly he wasn't a great or particularly dynamic lecturer. He had these meticulous handwritten notes on a legal pad that he would just turn over and just read off of. But what he said mattered. He was a good theologian, and he was also a good man. So I wasn't raised Lutheran, and Bill helped me be as Lutheran as anybody in my life. He showed me how to think as a Lutheran, how to be a Lutheran, how to carry myself as one. And he taught me also that Lutheranism wasn't about setting ourselves apart from others or about being exclusionary in any way. He kept on coming back to the formative key theological documents that define what it means to be Lutheran, the Lutheran confessions. He kept on saying that confessions are a bridge, not a barrier. They're what help unite us with the larger church, not separate us. And I think that's a powerful image that stuck with me, because too often we see our tradition as something that's separate from others. But Bill encouraged us as Lutherans to connect with others, with other Christians, with the world, with God. So we're going to kind of talk about that in a little bit. I also went to the same church that Bill did in seminary. He lived in Manhattan, and so I commuted down to Manhattan on Sundays to work at the church that he attended. And if you sat with Bill, you would have never known he was such a significant ecumenist. He was just a gentle older man caring for his wife as her health was failing, but they were still at church each Sunday. You wouldn't know that he was an ecumenist, a theologian, and a church leader, or a pastor. He didn't dress like that or scowl like that on a typical Sunday. And he didn't know how well connected he was, that he knew guys like this, unless you listen carefully to his stories. Every now and then he'd make a passing reference to Pope Benedict XVI, or someone else like His Holiness Bartholomew the First there. He wasn't like name dropping or bragging. He would just would come out as a part of the story, like, oh, the Joseph you were talking about, there is Joseph Ratzinger, which is Pope Benedict XVI. You're like, oh, okay, I get it now. And so for Bill, bridges, not barriers, was key. And that's going to be part of what we're exploring today. So I'm talking about what it means encouraging you to talk in a few minutes about what it means to be Lutheran. But this isn't going to be a time about us circling the wagons or being the right ones in a sea of wrongness. As Pastor Ann wonderfully put today, our tradition is one rooted in grace, but also in Scripture and in the cross. And it's open. It's open to dialogue, to growth, to reconciliation. So that's why we're going to be looking at this document for a few minutes today, called From Conflict to Communion. So we're going to, without further ado, let's turn to that. So let's start with a question before I introduce this document, From Conflict to Communion. I've done enough talking up to this point. I'm curious, I'm going to ask you all, what do you think some of the main differences are between Lutherans and Catholics in terms of like belief and faith practice? So what are some of the key differences that come to mind for you all? Yes?
We welcome everyone at communion.
Yeah, absolutely. We welcome everyone at communion. So that's in practice like an open and closed communion. Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Timing of baptism.
Timing of baptism. Yep. Yes.
Women can be ordained.
Women can be ordained. Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Yes.
Praying to Mary.
Yep. So praying to Mary, Marian devotion. Yeah, that's actually there's a lot to be said on that topic. I would happily have that conversation another day. I think the Lutheran tradition is, doesn't do that as much, but there may be more points of connection than we actually give credit for. But in practice, Mary is a much more significant part in the Catholic tradition than the Lutheran one. Yes.
Number of sacraments.
Number of sacraments. Yeah, I may kind of touch on that, yes, but I think there's 7 in the Roman Catholic tradition. There's 2 in the Lutheran tradition. Yes.
Isn't there something about like grace by faith versus grace by works?
Yeah. So kind of grace is a kind of a significant. That's one of the big Lutheran kind of central distinctions. And actually, my mentor Bill actually what was the general the main editor and kind of the key organizer of a document that came out I think in the late 90s called the Joint Declaration on Justification, so while grace comes out in different ways, it's not formally a church dividing issue. It's not saying we disagree so much we can't be church on this. The big parts we agree on, but in practice it feels like it doesn't play out that way for sure. So grace is a key part of this. Sue, was your hand up as well?
Praying to the saints.
Praying to the saints. So saints is another, that's that would be a really interesting, like kind of like Mary, another conversation for another. This document doesn't totally get into that, but there's some, maybe I might like be able to flag a little bit about how that might work differently. So the saints and devotion of saints is definitely something that's different. Any other differences we know? Yeah, Dave?
Private versus public confession.
Private versus public confession. Yeah, absolutely. So in practice, we do public confession. That's kind of at the beginning of church where we confess and forgive in a group setting. Often it can be called corporate confession. Catholics often do it individually. Again, there's nothing wrong with that. I had some seminary classmates that were seeking ordination that had a confessor. So it's not a normal thing. That's kind of in practice we see a difference there for sure. Yeah, Alex?
I think I'm thinking about all of the three of them. I think life doesn't come out automatically yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
We are still in the planet of life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Alex. So, any other things that we noticed that are different? Cool, that was a great starting spot. I'm curious because I know there's a lot of people that have Catholic backgrounds and also some people that have different forms of Lutheran backgrounds here. So that's helpful. We're going to get to that in the what still divides us in a couple minutes. But first, this document starts by talking about what we share in common. And despite our differences, like we just discussed, we do share a lot. So for instance, all the talk we have in church about the triune God, Father, Son, and Spirit, we agree on that. Saving work of Jesus Christ, we agree there. Baptism is the foundation of our unity. We recognize each other's baptism. Like if you were raised Catholic, we don't ask you to be rebaptized and vice versa. While it plays out differently, kind of in practice, at least like in the halls of power of each denomination, grace and justification are actually points of general agreement. We both believe that Christ is really present in the Eucharist and communion. And actually, it's a funny story. A lecturer came over from Oxford. She had this really pretentious title. She was the Regius Professor of Modern History, and she was a historian of the 16th century, which I was like, you're at a school like Oxford if they call modern history 16th century history. Lots of different things. And I, Kevin, am called to both be a church leader, a pastor, but I'm also called to be a husband and a dad. And I was struck when I was on the mission trip and just hearing people talk about their jobs or former jobs. One person in our congregation kind of does fire inspection to make make sure that fire alarm systems work at buildings, and he really emphasized that I feel like I'm helping save lives and protect people with that. In our tradition, we're going, yes, that is sacred work there. Absolutely. Yeah.
I don't know for you and you,
Yeah.
but some people say, so when did you decide to go into ministry?
Yeah.
And you kind of listen and you go, I've always kind of been in ministry.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then with that, you and what you're doing in making sure fire alarms work are doing ministry too. Or a lawyer that helps protect people from companies take advantage of them. That's doing ministry work. And it's not just so you don't have to work at a church, you don't have to be ordained. We believe that doesn't make you more holy or more sacred or get God's attention more closely. We believe that God calls us into a variety of different kinds of work, and that can be holy and good. So if you're working, that work you're doing, the Lutheran tradition holds as sacred. And maybe you're not working, maybe you're a homemaker, again, sacred, maybe you're retired. There are still callings for people after your professional days are behind you as well. So that's something we really believe. And we're going to talk about that in a couple minutes, meaning now actually. So we're going to talk about faith and vocation, that's the word, calling and belonging. So I want us to break into groups and talk through these three things. I'm going to introduce one, we're going to talk about it for a few minutes. Introduce the next, we're going to talk about that for a few minutes, and introduce the next one, and talk about that for a few minutes. So to start, we're going to talk about faith and calling. We're not going to make this big thing of like, why did you go into the job you have, and explain how that's holy to you. Maybe if you want to do that, go for it. But what I just want us to do is start a little simpler than that. I just invite you all to think about your week. Was there a moment, maybe a big moment, or maybe a small moment, where you felt like what you were doing mattered to someone else? And then also, when have you felt like your work, your care, or your presence made a difference? So I want you to go find another person or two around you. Ideally, somebody you didn't come in with. Maybe somebody that looks friendly enough, even if you don't know them. Turn to them and introduce yourself, say hello, and then share about your week, a moment that you felt like what you were doing mattered to somebody else, and then a time where you felt like your work, your care, or your presence made a difference. So we're going to talk about that for a few minutes. Yes?
And I would like to encourage current members of St. Matthew's to maybe get up and move to a spot where you see some of our new members sitting. And I can help with that as well, just to make sure we mix it up good so we get to know each other.
Yeah, so new members, get up and move around.
Or that.
Yeah, cool. Let's go do that for about 5 or so minutes. Okay, I gave you all a couple more minutes, so let's keep on going now. And because we're going to be done with this class in like this over 15 minutes. But that doesn't mean that these conversations can end. I hope that we can continue these conversations. But before we go to belonging, I'm curious, anything we want to share from like what came out in our conversations as groups about our faith and our calling? Anything we want to share? Yeah, Alex?
That I mattered in both my work, care, and my presence to other people.
Yeah, you definitely matter with kind of your work and with your families and like with your commitment to group like Larsh. Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Alex. Yeah, I look forward to hearing more from you about, I could tell that you had some rich conversations in there. And this is something that is like the Lutheran Church, the Lutheran World Federation is like, yeah, we believe this is like the work and stuff you talked about is so sacred. We'd rather not compromise on this, even in the name of like visible unity with other faith traditions. Next, belonging. Have you ever felt unsure if you fit in at church? Maybe because of your background, or your questions, or your story. And what has helped you feel like you belonged at church? Let's take a couple minutes and talk about that. Do you like being in the same groups? Do you want to mix it up? Same groups? Okay, keep the conversation going.
My bad, we skipped. We already did that question.
Yeah. One of the big issues in the Lutheran which is sometimes defined as creators, and I think if on the one hand, all believe the same things they want to belong, that's one thing. On the other hand, close means your buddy with these people, but not necessarily in any kind of faith community. So what I love about belonging to the community and community, so once we were in the church where we built in the church and communion wasn't around, and then we saw one another, we had to look at one another's eyes across the circle, and so we were all in that circle, and then one time figure out a solution.
Okay, let's come back together. So, thank you all. I know there's a lot more to be said. We've covered a lot of ground, but just wanted to be able to introduce as we think about. We're not using like Lutheran-y words per se, but in this conversation, these are key parts about what we believe it means to be Lutheran in our life. About believing that we're called into making matter, doing work and being present with others in a way that matters. About being a community where people belong, and also caring and bearing for bearing with one another and bearing one another's burdens. So these are key parts about what it means to be part of the Lutheran tradition. And so then from there we're going to pivot to talk about calling and belonging, to talk about stewardship. Not just about giving money, but about caring for what God has entrusted with us, our relationships, our time, our talents, our community, all that kind of stuff. So historically, we had a whole class here giving like a sales pitch here, but we're not trying to, we're going to do a little different for the next few minutes. There's no like transaction, we just want this to be an invitation. Because we believe that as Lutherans, that stewardship is about caring for what God has entrusted us. So yeah, part of that's money, but there's also time, relationships, our gifts, our presence in community. So it's, talking about stewardship kind of begins with us asking, where do I feel called to contribute to a more loving world, a more just world, a more trustworthy world? And we believe as the church we're definitely a part of that, but it's not always, but it goes beyond that as well. And we believe that it's that what we do with stewardship is a response to what God has given us, a response to God's grace, not just a transaction per se. There's a couple of key parts, like in practice in our stewardship rhythm, that may feel a little bit like, that may feel more transactional, that you like fill out a paper and hand it back to the church, but that we hope that they can be launching off points to be able to do this kind of good work. Sue, would you be willing to introduce one of those with the time and talent sheet? We can talk about that for a couple minutes, and then I'd be happy to close up with talking about the kind of the pledge card as well. So
sure. So I am going to do a little sales pitch on getting connected or involved. It's just passed down. Involved with St. Matthew's, because once you start to get involved with something, not only are you using the gifts that God has given you, but that's how you form connections and community here. And so what I'm showing you now, you don't need to turn in or anything, it's just a point of reference. Did it make it around? Oh, behind you. Thanks. This is our activities and ministries sheet, and it is something we do ask people to prayerfully consider and return during the stewardship time, which is like in the month of November-ish. And I thought Pastor Kevin did a great job of saying this is like a starting off point. What are you curious about on it? What have you noticed that St. Matthew's is doing that you think, well, that feels like something I would like to do? And I always suggest to people that they try to get involved with one thing, just one thing. Know that it's an invitation to be involved. It's not a lifetime commitment. What do you like to do, and what are you good at? Chances are that is a gift that God has given you, and you are encouraged to try to use that gift here. But there is no pressure. I will reach out on occasion and ask people, hey, I think you might be interested in doing this. We have a need for this. You can always say no, thank you. Don't have to ever feel any sense of pressure. But I was just telling in my little sharing group, in the years that I've been here, which is a lot of them now, 24 years at this position, we are not all we can be without you. And that's just the doggone truth. Everybody who's willing to share a little bit of themselves with this community makes it a better place, makes it the warm, welcoming place that you all have identified that you like about St. Matthew's. But you should do something because you love it. So don't ever feel like there's pressure, but know that God is calling you to this place for probably multiple reasons, and maybe one of them is to get involved in something meaningful with church and develop some connections, relationships, and to help others. There's many reasons that we serve, and it's individual for everyone. It's your journey. But you'll see this form in the paper that we have to mail out in a few weeks, which I get what you're saying. We don't want it to feel institutional. Here's a form I have to fill out. But you're part of this community now. You're part of the family, and we want to get to know you better. So take a moment to fill this out when you receive it in the mail in a few weeks, and then ask if you have questions about things. Yes.
Tell me something about new member partner.
Well, that would be you today. You today. So what we do is we actually ask, or I have a team that comes to these meetings and then afterwards provides follow-up contact or invitations. And Julie, you do that already because that's why Karen Bertucci is here. So it's being with all of you. Every time that people join, it's getting into a relationship or partnership with you so you feel comfortable and welcomed here.
Great. Yeah, so this is kind of like a good entry point. Obviously you can just show up or ask. Like the only way, for instance, to go on an adult mission trip isn't inherently like check a box on this form, but it is a way that helps organize and connect you more deeply with the life of our church. And we don't assume that people will do the same thing every single year, so that's why we offer this we offer this each year. And then so there's that, and then also. That you will also get in our stewardship time is a kind of a pledge card. This is a way to kind of prayerfully consider how can I not just give of my time and of myself, but also of my material, financial resources to help do everything from keeping the lights on to paying staff salaries that help organize and connect us for these various opportunities to serve and be connected. To be involved in planning worship. I was having a conversation with Pete was talking about a powerful memory of a church leader kind of stopping a service when somebody was in need and helping connect them with food, while giving also helps us provide those sort of material resources to help people in need and our partners both locally and globally. We commit to giving at least 10% of our own money that we have come in to go support others as a gift to others, whether that's a partner or a feeding ministry or things of that sort. So contributing to us is another just concrete, simple way of us as giving to St. Matthew's. That was the us there. That we can help be that kind of church that blesses and supports others as well. So we invite you, when you get that, to both prayerfully consider how you can spend your time as a gift and how your material resources can be a gift as well. And with that as well, we're going to be doing that a little bit differently than in the past. So this is your first time, you won't know the difference, but there's going to be a new kind of online way that you'll be able to be more intimately connected with your giving. You won't have to inherently ask our bookkeeper, how much have I given? How much did I pledge? You'll have more control over that day in and day out. That is through a program called Realm. So more information coming on that soon. But any questions about that? Sweet. So you'll be receiving that pledge card in the next few weeks, and that and the newest version of our time and talent sheet in the next couple weeks as well. That'll come in the mail, but there's also opportunities to always physically pick that up, and there will be a way to submit those online as well. So thank you for your support and your participation in our church. Really, really appreciate that. Do you have anything else to add? Looks like you're going to say something.
Leslie, next Sunday's New Member Sunday, and so look for, I will be at a table in the Commons area. You get a different colored name tag so that the members can identify you more quickly and welcome you. Sit anywhere you'd like in church. There'll be a point during the service where you will come up and be acknowledged and receive a blessing. And then afterwards there's a cake, and big cake, and I'll make sure that we have some set aside for everybody, so there'll be plenty to share, and just so excited that you guys are going to be joining us next Sunday. Wonderful.
Yeah, so excited for that next week, whether you're joining or just worshiping with us. So thank you all, and welcome to St. Matthew's. By all means, if you want to keep these conversations going, do that. If you need to get going home, I get that. Some of you might need to get into the 11 o'clock service. I know I need to do that. So thank you all for being here. It was a real gift to spend an hour with you. Thank you.